Today is part 7, asking the question, can Jesus be just a good teacher? And we're walking through the Gospel of John and looking at what Jesus says to see whether that would allow him to fall into the category of being just a good teacher, or is what he says so radical and extreme in a positive way that we couldn't just consider him a good teacher, because he's either got to be a liar, a lunatic, or Lord, as C.S. Lewis pointed out. So today we're in John chapter 5, and we're going to read verses 1 through 18, and then briefly look at those. After these things there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porticos. In these lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, and withered, waiting for the moving of the waters. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring up of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. A man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, "Do you wish to get well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your pallet, and walk." Immediately the man became well, and picked up his pallet and began to walk. Now it was the Sabbath on that day. So the Jews were saying to the man who was cured, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not permissible for you to carry your pallet." But he answered them, He who made me well was the one who said, 'Pick up your pallet and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said this to you? 'Pick up your pallet and walk'?" But the man who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had slipped away while there was a crowd in that place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "Behold, you have become well. Do not sin any more, so that nothing worse happens to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. For this reason, the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But he, being Jesus, answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I myself am working." For this reason, therefore, the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because he not only was breaking the Sabbath, but also was calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. So let's look briefly at this passage. So we see this unusual setting where they're at this pool where apparently an angel of the Lord would come. It doesn't say exactly when or how often, but they would the angel would stir the water, and the first person to step in would be healed. So these people were waiting around this pool of water, waiting for their opportunity to try to step in and to get that healing when the water stirred. But this man said, Jesus asked him a question, this is what's so interesting. Jesus will come to us lots of times and he'll speak to us, and he says, "Do you wish to get well?" So that's the question. And we so many times divert the question and ask our own question. And we say, we can think of the reasons why we can't get healed based out of our past experience. So this man's been living out of an experience of he can't get to the water fast enough. So he's still living in that reality when he's confronted with Jesus. But Jesus lives outside of that reality. He doesn't need to be confined by that. And so many times when Jesus speaks into our lives, we are thinking about the practical and the way that God can't work in our lives, when Jesus is saying, no, I'm not confined by the constraints of this world. I can step outside of those anytime. So he invites us to step into his reality, and that's what he's doing here in this place. But immediately the man says, "But sir, I have no one to put me into the water." So again, right away, instead of saying, "Yes, I want to get well," he's thinking of why he can't get well. So I encourage you, wherever you're at in life, whatever's happening in your life right now, that God wants to work in your life. And it may not be the way you want it to, but he is indeed asking to be invited into his life. So when he steps into your life, be willing to receive him and to respond to him based on the question he asked. Don't put up additional walls or barriers, but trust that God can and will do in you and through you things that you can't believe can be done on your own power. And that's what the Christian life's all about. God wants to step into our reality, bring his reality to bear, so that we are not limited by our abilities, but we are able to do whatever he's called us to do as he lives in and through us. So Jesus says to him, get up, pick up your pallet and walk. So Jesus is not teaching the man anything. He's saying to the man, I'm healing you. I am healing you. Does not sound like something a good teacher would just teach. And you can't respond to that unless you walk in faith. And so the man said, immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet and began to walk. Now, of course, the other thing you see here is the Jews, their problem was not glorifying God for the healing of this man who had been unable to walk for 38 years. But their first thing is, wait, this is a Sabbath. You can't carry your pallet. And that's what happens when we become religious. It's very easy to follow God by following rules and guidelines, but we're not really following God. When we step into following Christ in a real and living relationship, he's going to draw us outside our comfort zone. I mean, we like to have a lot of rules and structure because then it makes things more manageable for us. But God wants us to be outside of our comfort zone at all times when we follow him. And he will call us to do things oftentimes, what I found in my life, is little things that are outside of my natural realm of comfort. And that's when he's most free to work. When I am fearful because I can't step up to the plate on this, I can't bring my own resource to bear on the situation. And God's like, that's perfect, because now I can bring my resources to bear through you. And that's what he's always asking to do. So don't be a condemner like these Jews who are focused on carrying the pallet and the breaking of the Sabbath. Again, don't be following the letter of the law, but follow Christ in the spirit of the law. And he is the fulfillment of the law. So when he says take up his pallet, he's not breaking the Sabbath, but he's actually bringing renewal to this man and showing them a higher level of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a day of healing and restoration. It's not about so much not us and our power not doing work, but it's so much about God's power, his rest coming to us. He says, take my yoke upon you and I will give you rest. It's as we join in union with Christ, then we can step into his rest. We can step into his power and we can step into his freedom that only he can bring. So Jesus himself is the Sabbath rest. And he gives this man his Sabbath rest by bringing healing to him. So let's look at what else farther here Jesus says. So afterwards, Jesus finds this man and he tells him, behold, you have become well. Do not sin anymore so that nothing worse happens to you. Well, again, in a material-only world, and if Jesus is a good teacher, what are we talking about when he says sin no more? Who is he sinning against? And sin in the Bible, and what Jesus is speaking to, is sinning against God. That's what Jesus is calling people to, is not to sin, not to miss the mark, not to break God's law. And the way we do that is by trying to circumvent Jesus to fulfill the law in our own ability. So there's two ways. That's one way. We miss the mark when we try to do it in our own ability. But we also miss the mark when we say, I don't care about God's law, and I'm not even going to try to hit the mark. So those are the two extremes of trying to follow God's law. But Christ says the only way to fulfill the law is by trusting in me. Then I will fulfill the law through you, because I myself am the fulfillment of the law. Again, an extreme thing that Jesus is saying here. Go and sin no more. And again, can Jesus be just a good teacher? For this reason, the Jews were persecuting Jesus because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. He was bringing healing and restoration on the Sabbath, and that they did not like. But then he answered them, and this is what he says, why he's doing this on the Sabbath. My Father is working until now, and I myself am working. So what did that mean? Well, we see in verse 18 exactly what the Jews understood Jesus to be saying. For this reason, therefore, the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because he not only was breaking the Sabbath, but also was calling God his own Father and making himself equal with God. So again, I ask you, can Jesus be just a good teacher? Who is he to you? Has he come to you and asked to give you healing? Have you turned away and said, oh, there's this reason I can't, I'm not good enough, I've got other things I want to do in my life? Have you given him your excuses, or have you just trust yourself and said, Lord, I trust you, and get up, take your pallet, and walk? He wants to bring redemption and healing to your life and to my life, and the only way he can do that is when we trust in him, when he comes to us and we trust his ways over our ways. So I hope this encourages you and challenges you, and I just pray that you consider, who is Jesus? Is he more than just a good teacher? God bless until next time.